welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about one of my favorite things to talk about, and that is how to build muscle. I get asked this question a lot, and I want to go over the basics of how you can build muscle. I want to talk about from the training perspective, I want to talk about from the nutrition perspective, and I also want to talk about common mistakes I see people make when they're trying to build muscle. Go grab your coffee and let's break all of this down. Okay, so let's start with talking about your training, because without your training, you're not going to build much of anything, right? So intensity, I use that word a lot. And intensity in this case, it does not mean jumping up and down, getting your heart rate jacked up, doing HIIT, all that kind of stuff. That's kind of what we think of when we hear the word intensity. What I mean for this scenario with intensity is weight. How much weight are you moving? Because that's going to be the key for you to build anything, is how much weight can you move. So we need to think about intensity. We also need to think about volume. And here's the thing about volume. Some people seem to think that you need to train tons and tons and tons of volume. And the problem with that is when you start doing that and you're trying to train a lot of volume, lots of sets, lots of reps, and you're trying to move as much weight as possible, you're putting your body under a lot of stress. And when you do that, you're asking to be burned out very quickly. And you're not going to be able to be consistent with your training. You're going to end up spinning your wheels. So there has to be a nice marriage between intensity and volume. So let's think of it this way. With intensity, you do want some lifts in your workout that are lower rep, higher weight. The point is to lift as much as you can. You also want in your workout exercises where you maybe do more reps, and so the weight can't be quite as high. The marriage of those two in your program is probably the most beneficial long-term for muscle building. It's not either or, and I get asked that a lot. People always ask me, is it lower weight, higher reps, or is it higher weight, lower reps? And the answer is it's a combination of the two. The other thing to remember with training is this, and this is really important. Training drives the muscle building car. And you've heard me use the car example a lot. I use it for fat loss all the time. I say the fat loss car is driven by nutrition because without your driver, you're going nowhere. And that is still really true with fat loss. It is driven by nutrition. But when we get to training, things change. Training used to be the passenger in the fat loss car. Well, now that we're trying to build muscle, training has now become the driver of the muscle building car. Because without training, you go absolutely nowhere. And this is really important to understand. You need to bring that intensity to your workouts. You need to bring some volume to your workouts, which does not always mean, by the way, going to failure all the time. That's not what you want to do, because again, you're going to burn out. But without your training, you're not going to build anything. So training has now become the priority. It's the driver of the muscle building car. But the muscle building car also has a passenger, and the passenger is nutrition. So let's next talk about nutrition and what roles nutrition can play with your muscle building and how you could potentially set up your nutrition to build some muscle. Okay, so let's talk about the passenger in the muscle building car, which is nutrition. If you've been losing weight and you're focusing on getting strong, you could still build some muscle while you're in a deficit. It's not the most optimum way to do it. You can build some. So if you have a bunch of weight to lose, go into a fat loss phase, but focus on getting as strong as you can so you can build some muscle as you go along, so that when you're ready to go into maintenance or even later into a surplus maybe, you will be at the place that you want to be. But you still can build a little bit of muscle in a deficit. Like I said, it's not optimal, but it can be done. But you can build a bunch of muscle in maintenance, definitely. I've done that for years, basically maintained my weight for the better part of 3 years, 4 years now, and I've built a significant amount of muscle in maintenance. That's the better spot to be in as opposed to a deficit. But the best spot to build muscle, the most optimal way to build muscle, is when you're in a calorie surplus, because You're eating more calories than your body needs. You've got more calories to go towards energy into your workouts, and you have calories for your muscles to grow. So yes, the surplus is the optimal way to build muscle. Now, when people hear the word surplus, they freak out, right? They freak out because they think, oh my God, this is a feeding frenzy. I'm gonna blimp out like a balloon, and I don't want the scale to go up. I wanna build muscle, but I don't want the scale to go up. The problem is that's not possible. It's not possible. If you truly want to put on some muscle mass, the scale is gonna go up. But before you freak out, that's okay, because you can do this in a slow and controlled way. And when you do that, the weight gain is maybe a half pound to a pound a month. That's what I did in my muscle building phase, half pound to a pound a month of weight gain. And then at the end of your muscle building phase, you can decide maybe you want to go back into a cut to kind of lean out a little bit. That's cool, because you will gain a little body fat and you will gain a little weight. That's okay. If you eat uncontrollably for months on end, you will gain significant weight, and that's a different story. But let's talk about this surplus, and let's talk about how we can break that down. So if you're trying to build some muscle, you want to get into a slight surplus, here's the easiest way to do this. And that is, coming from a maintenance standpoint, you just want to start adding calories over the course of a week, 300 to 500 per week, so that by the end of the week, you're in that plus column, 300, maybe even more per week. At the end of the week one, you may not see a lot happening. So you may need to add an additional 500 to 600 calories the next week, so that by the end of the second week, you might be in the plus column 1,000 or more. It's not per day. Think of it over the course of a week, and you can attack that any way you want. You could attack that X number more calories per day, or you could attack that by having 2 or 3 days during the week where you eat more than maintenance. That's how I decided to tackle it. That worked best for me. The whole idea is just to get into the plus column by the end of the week. That's it. And you keep adding calories until you start seeing the scale start to slowly go up. Now, that brings us down here to the scale. This is where everyone freaks out. This is going to be the hardest part for most of you to deal with, especially if you're coming from the mindset of you've worked most of your life to get that scale to go down, and now for the first time ever, you are trying to get it to go up. I posted a video in YouTube a while ago on my personal experience with being in a muscle building phase for 6 weeks. I'm gonna have Dan put the title of the video down here that you can go right over there and watch that, because I want you to watch that, because I talk a lot about the scale and about the mindset piece surrounding that and how difficult that was for me for the first month and a half. I was not eating what I was supposed to be eating. I told everyone I just wasn't hungry, but the reality was I was afraid of the scale going up, and so I just wouldn't eat. Once I broke through that and I decided, okay, I've got to do this. I've got to do what I'm supposed to do. I did it, and everything started falling into place. I slowly gained weight, half pound to a pound a month. I was almost at a pound every single month, which is where I wanted to be. I gained a good bit of muscle in 6 months, and I ended up not wanting to go into a cut after. And I go into all of the reasons why and how I dealt with that, but I think it's super important for you to go see that video. So again, go click on that video and go watch that too, because I think it'll be super helpful for you from the mindset perspective. But the scale is what throws a lot of people off, and it did for me. We don't want it to go up. We spend so long and work so hard to get it to go down that we're thinking we're just kind of nullifying everything that we did. All of our hard work goes out the window, and that's not how it is. That's what we think, because in our heads we're thinking we're just going to eat uncontrollably for every single day, calories and calories and calories. That's not it. You still should track. You should still add calories back in slowly. That's why I mentioned adding 300 to 500 a week to start, because that is a slow add. You'll feel like you're in more control that way. You can certainly add more than that if you want, but a slow add, for those of you that don't want to see the scale move up too quickly, that would be the way to go. Keep adding, and when you see the scale start to kind of trickle up, then maintain right there at that number. And what you're gonna find when you're in a surplus, month to month, just like in fat loss, the scale in fat loss does this, right? in fat loss. It goes up and down, up and down, up and down. It's going to do the same thing when you're in a surplus. I had times in my muscle building phase where I dropped weight and then it slowly came back on. I had times where I went over my target weight and then it would settle back down. So just understand that the scale's going to fluctuate the same way. Like you're still going to hold on to water, you're still going to let go of water. All those daily fluctuations that drive us crazy are still going to be around, right? The overall trend from month to month, however, you want to see go slightly up as opposed to slightly down for fat loss. Therein lies the big difference. Okay, so we've talked about your training, the intensity and volume. We've talked about nutrition and how surplus is the optimal way to build muscle, but you can certainly do it in maintenance and maybe even a little bit in a deficit as well over a long period of time. Talked about the scale, how that's going to screw with your head and how you have to push through that. And I referred you over to my muscle building phase summary video where you can listen to me talk about what I went through. I think it'll be very relatable for you. Let's talk about the common mistakes I see people make when they're trying to build muscle. And they're all related basically to what I just said. One of the mistakes I see people make is training. They're not training hard enough. The intensity is super important. Weight is super important. And I know right now, potentially many of you don't have access to a gym. And that's tough, right? You can't replicate having access to 300 pounds at the gym at your home if you don't have access to 300 pounds. I mean, there's just no way to be able to fix that, to make it so you can do the exact same thing without the exact same materials, right? But you can still definitely make progress. But your training needs to challenge you. You need to move as much weight as you can. That's the intensity piece. That always needs to be at the forefront. You want to make sure that you are training more than a couple days a week. 4 days a week would be great. You could even do 5. There's no need to train any more than 4 or 5 days a week. Make those quality workouts, make those quality reps, and have a quality program, and you're gonna make tremendous progress. But remember, this needs to be tough. Weightlifting and building muscle should not tickle. It's not something that you should leave feeling like you could have done 20 more reps. Adjust your weight accordingly. If you're trying to work out at home, be creative with your weight. I talk about this all the time on Instagram, how you can add more challenge to different exercises, adding a half rep, adding pauses, adding slow eccentrics. All of those are ways that you can add more challenge to an exercise if you do not have more weight to add. And again, at home, get creative. Fill a box full of books. Start squatting with that. Start pressing that over your head. Put a backpack full of rocks on your back and start deadlifting or squatting with that. Not training hard enough is pretty much the first mistake. The second mistake is not eating enough. And that stems from this, from not wanting the scale to go up, which is exactly what I did for a month and a half. If you're going to be in a surplus, you need to be in a surplus. And it doesn't have to be a big surplus. Remember that. You don't have to be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of calories in the plus column. You just need to be in the plus column a little bit. And you just need to make sure you're doing that. Even when you start seeing the scale creep up, understand that you are in control of this. You're not gaining fat and fat and fat. That's not what's happening. You are going to gain some weight. You will put on some body fat, but if you do it the right way, it's going to be in a controlled way. And then when you're done, you can choose to go into a cut should you choose to do that. And you may not want to do that. That's what happened to me. I didn't want to do it. I stayed right where I was, and I naturally, out of the 6 pounds I gained, I naturally lost probably 2 to 3. That's where I hover nowadays. Totally up to you. You have a lot of options, but you have to eat to fuel those workouts. You absolutely have to. And the last mistake, I think it's just people are too impatient. They want to see results. They want to see them now. Just like fat loss, right? We want to see results. We want to see them now. Same thing with muscle building. The deal is here that muscle building is going to take longer. And you're not really judging the scale on how much muscle you're actually building. So one big piece of advice, and I want you to write this down, that I want you to do when you go into a muscle building phase is this. You need to go into it long enough. 6 months is a great length of time to be in a muscle building phase. Longer would be probably even better. But anything short of 6 months is probably not going to be adequate for you to see the changes you really want to see. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, I want you to make sure that you take progress photos. I think that is so important with a muscle building phase. And I made the mistake of not doing enough of those on the before side, because when you see yourself in the mirror every day, you're not gonna notice the difference. But when you see day 1 next to day 60 or even day 90, you're gonna start seeing the difference. And I would even do a couple flex poses, because that's where you're really gonna see the difference. But go ahead and take those progress photos, take them wearing the same clothes, doing the same poses at the same time of day, so you have a visual record of your muscle building phase as well. You will be so glad on the end that you did that. 6 months at least, and progress photos, super, super important for your muscle building phase. And just to summarize everything about how you can build muscle, give yourself 6 months, maybe a little bit more. Make sure your training intensity is where it needs to be with weight, and make sure you have a nice balance of weight and lower rep exercises and volume, meaning higher rep exercises and lower weight. And lower weight doesn't mean low, low, low like pink dumbbells. It just means you're gonna have to back down a little bit, but you're still trying to push yourself even with a higher rep exercise. So those are super important. And your nutrition, remember, you can definitely build muscle and maintenance. Absolutely you can. And if that's where you want to start, absolutely start there. You can also, even more optimally, build muscle in a surplus. And again, it doesn't have to be much, just a slight surplus will do it. And this whole thing right here, don't let that scale mess with you. Do not let the scale mess with your mind. Understand what we're doing here. You want to build some muscle, you've got to follow through. The scale's going to go up a little bit. It's okay. You follow this protocol and you will build yourself some muscle. And I can't wait to see it. I hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments below and I will get back to you. And let me know how your muscle building journey is going. And again, go back to my previous video on my personal 6-month muscle building phase that you can watch and hear all about. It's a lot about the mindset piece. Super helpful for you. Hope this has helped you in general. And again, thank you for being here and we will talk to you soon.